G'day and welcome to another Tuesday's video. Before we get stuck into the topic of today's video, I just want to take a moment to remind everyone that these Tuesday videos are made by me. These videos will always be about completely random topics. Technical videos, gear reviews, or maybe even just a little bit of storytelling. Friday's videos always have been and will continue to be made by Steffi and follow our adventures as we travel the world as it happens. Alright, today we're going to talk suspension. We recently changed out our front coil spring suspension, so I thought I'd take that opportunity to show you guys the install. Seeing as though we're on the topic of suspension, after the install, I'm going to give you guys a rundown of the suspension system we run in our Land Rover Defender 130. Before we get going on the install, I have to throw a huge shout out and thank you to the team at Euro 4x4 in France. Over the years that we've been on the road, the majority of the gear that we've had sent to us in various countries has been sent by Euro 4x4. Francoise and Nick, merci beaucoup. The reason for this front spring changeout is due to our old springs suffering from a severe case of spring sag. The springs we changed out were standard 2-inch lift front coil springs for our Defender, not heavy duty. With our heavy duty bull bar, winch, roll cage, and various other heavy pieces of kit on the Defender, those front springs were suffering. Through constant inspection over time and a lot of measuring, I noticed that those springs were sagging significantly. After a browse on the Euro 4x4 website, I came across a set of King springs, heavy duty design. Now what caught my eye was these springs were more specifically recommended for vehicles with a heavy Australian style bull bar and winch. After a chat with Nick in France at Euro 4x4, I decided to give them a go. Now before any suspension work takes place, it's always a good idea to take a few measurements before and after the job. I measure from the wheel arch to the center of the wheel hub. I'd been taking this particular measurement over the last 12 months and monitoring the gradual fatigue of our old springs. Although a job like this is possible to do yourself on the road with the right equipment, I do recommend visiting a local garage. It's going to be a lot safer and easier. We were very lucky to have access to Mr. Arthur's workshop and one of his expert mechanics to do the job. The vehicle was lifted nice and high using a jack under the front axle. Jack stands were then positioned under the chassis on both sides. The vehicle was then lowered onto the jack stands, allowing the front suspension to relax. A quick note that we removed our camper for this job. One of the many benefits of having a removable truck camper. Now this job was certainly possible with the camper still installed on the truck, but by removing it, it makes the job a lot easier with the vehicle being lighter, and we can also live in the camper whilst the repair work takes place. Next step, remove the tires and release the turrets. Remove the lower retainer plate and the shock absorber nut. With a bit of pushing and pulling on the shock absorber, along with what I'm pretty sure were some nasty words in Taiwanese, cursing the Land Rover designers that decided it was a good idea to put the shock absorber inside the spring, the coils were out. Installing the new springs proved easier than removing the old. Old mate then worked back from the start by fixing the turret and upper shock absorber nut in place, then the lower retention plate and shocky nut with some jack assistance to expose the thread and get the nut started. Replace the tires and that's job done. At the end of the job, I re-measured and found the vehicle body to be sitting 3.5 centimeters higher with the new springs installed. This confirmed what I already knew, that the old springs were fatigued and sagging. After a job like this, a test drive is of course very important. I noticed straight away the front was sitting a lot higher, the vehicle seemed to drive a lot better, and the wheel alignment and balance was good. A very big thank you, Shisha, to Arthur and the team at Top 4x4 for the install. Now the job's done, let's talk about our suspension system and how we found what we reckon is the perfect setup for our rig. In the rear, we have 2-inch lifted heavy-duty Terra Firma coil springs. Inside those coil springs, we have a set of Airbag Man airbags. Our shock absorbers consist of a set of Terra Firma adjustable shocks along with a set of Old Man Emu Nitrocharger Sport. In the front, as you just saw, we have a set of heavy duty King springs, along with a set of the same shock absorbers we have in the rear, the Terra Firma adjustables. So how did we decide on this particular setup and why? You might remember bear number 1. On this rig we had a different setup. We had a set of super heavy duty rear coil springs, dual Bilstein B6 shock absorbers in the rear. In the front, standard springs with Bilstein B6 shock absorbers. While this setup was perfect for driving with the camper installed, when we were driving with the camper off, the rear was sitting high and the ride was super hard and uncomfortable. After our accident in bear number 1 in Portugal, that had us building a second Defender 130. We decided to take a different approach on bear number 2. After lots of research and discussion with the team, we decided on this current setup. The rear springs are not quite as heavy duty as what we had on bear number 1. To compensate this, we installed the airbags. When the camper is initially installed, the rear does sag slightly. We put some air in the bags and that brings the rear up and the vehicle nice and level. I've also found that the airbags help compensate for us having no rear sway bar due to our long range diesel tank. The front and rear adjustable shock absorbers are awesome. I'll soften or harden the suspension regularly to suit the current driving conditions. When driving with the camper removed, I'll drop the airbag pressure to a minimum and soften the shock absorber setting. This current setup has proven to give us a much more comfortable ride, both on-road, off-road, with the camper and with the camper removed. Although smooth and comfortable in a Land Rover Defender is possibly not what most people would consider to be a pleasant experience. The Old Man Emu shock absorbers were added in Kyrgyzstan by our good mate Nikolai. We had the Terra Firma adjustable shock absorbers sitting on a set of double shock absorber brackets, so I thought why not throw an extra set on there. My thoughts were that this could possibly help also to prolong the life of the Terra Firma shock absorbers by allowing us to have them set at a lower setting. We do have a 2-inch lift. Is a lift necessary? No, a lift is definitely not necessary for what we do. But this was a personal choice and one that I do not regret. There have been many times that a little bit of extra body and chassis clearance have come in handy. On the other hand, there has never been a time that having a lifted vehicle has hindered us in any way. This particular suspension setup is of course what works for us. Your requirements are going to depend on many factors. Your weight, your height, your balance, your estimated load, just to name a few. Whatever suspension system you go for, be sure to keep up the regular maintenance and inspection. It's very important. Finding the perfect suspension setup can be trial and error, but it can make a huge difference to the handling and capabilities of your vehicle. Please, if you do enjoy our videos, share them, subscribe, hit that notification bell. We're super close to 100,000 subscribers and we're trying to get there before Steffi's birthday in November. So help us out, we'd really appreciate it. If you would like to support the work we do in creating these videos, please check out our Patreon page. There's a link in the description. Thank you kindly for watching the video and we'll see you next time.